All this proves irrefutably that Washington, contrary to the statements of the White House and the Pentagon, is directly involved in the conflict in Ukraine. It is the Biden administration that is directly responsible for all the rocket attacks approved by Kiev on residential areas and civilian infrastructure in the settlements of Donbass and other regions, which resulted in the mass death of civilians.
Russia has for months now accused the United States of playing a much more direct role in this conflict than what the United States admitted to. It wasn't just weapons they were sending, training that they were giving to Ukrainian soldiers, food that they were sending them to eat, salaries that they were paying them, but it also appears, thanks to the comments of the head of Ukraine's main intelligence directorate, that the United States appears to be vetting targets that the Ukrainian side is attacking. So in this case, we can presume that the United States green-lighted attacks, several attacks on half a dozen urban communities on the city of Donetsk, Kalchevsk, Novaya Kakhovka, others, urban areas, residential areas, which were undoubtedly struck by US-provided weapons. These are HIMARS rockets, guided missiles, that the United States has provided to Kiev for use in this conflict. The United States has tried to say that, argue that its role is much more limited. But if this is indeed true, that the United States has veto power over every strike, then it does go to show that the United States has a much, much more involved role in this conflict.
As far as military intelligence is concerned, Britain and the US have provided almost everything from information to equipment. He suggested there was a level of consultation between intelligence officials of both countries prior to launching missiles that would allow Washington to stop any potential attacks if they were unhappy with the intended target.
He was also pressed by journalists on where they got their targeting information from, and he said that they operate with real-time information, which is presumably satellite footage, imagery, which Ukraine couldn't have possibly come by on its own. So this is presumably, again, real-time satellite information that is provided to them, though he refused to confirm or deny this, provided to them by the CIA, MI6, the United States and Great Britain, basically. Further, there was a strike on Yelenovka, which was on a prison where more than 1,000 Ukrainian prisoners of war are housed. That is, Azov prisoners, others Ukrainian regulars, and after an attack, again, by an American HIMARS multiple rocket launcher system, more than 50 Ukrainian prisoners of war perished, 75 others were injured. So by the logic of what this Ukrainian official admitted to, the United States green-lighted this attack on a prison, as well as other attacks on civilian infrastructure. This will only intensify and lend strength to Russia's accusations that the United States is playing a much more involved and much more dangerous role than was previously known, which again opens up avenues for an escalation that nobody, absolutely nobody, wants.
It has been a huge meeting. Military attachés from 49 countries attended the briefing at Russia's defense ministry here in central Moscow, where the deputy head shared with the foreign guests humanitarian aspects of Moscow's special military operation in Ukraine. The Yelenovka attack was one burning issue. To remind you, on Friday morning, a local detention center where at that moment almost 200 Ukrainian prisoners of war were held was shelled with US-supplied high-mobility artillery rocket systems known as HIMARS. The strike killed 50 people and injured more than 70 others. At the briefing, Moscow presented the results of its own probe showing the fragments of the US weapon and also a detailed map indicating the direction of the strike. Moscow believes the Ukrainian troops are behind the attack, and they say the reason was to eliminate the captured Ukrainian military who started speaking up, including against Kiev.
Ukrainian forces purposefully attacked the pre-trial detention center in the Donetsk People's Republic. The Ukrainian army had previously insisted that the surrendered Azov battalion members must be kept in this pre-trial detention center. First, a video confession to the crimes of one of the members of Azov was published, and later a blow was struck at the pre-trial detention center. The leadership of Ukraine gave the order to launch a missile strike, as captured militants began to testify exposing their crimes, including against civilians.
Meanwhile, Kiev blames Russia for the Yelenovka attack. Earlier, Moscow invited the United Nations and the Red Cross experts to come to the scene and to participate in the investigation, to shed light on what happened exactly there last Friday. And we know that the UN spokesperson already gave a positive answer. I talked about that with the members of the delegations from China and Iran.
It is the usual approach by the US to give weapons to terrorist groups, and it is a part of their aggressive policy in Ukraine. It is a good measure by Russia to invite the United Nations and the Red Cross to participate in the investigation, and it could neutralize the all-destructive policy against Russia, and it will make clear to the world what is Russia doing.
We see a lot of tragedy took place in the Ukraine, and especially give me the deep impression is that they use the Hamas to attack. United Nations is the most important international organization, so they should go to see what happened and trigger the investigation and give the feedback to the international society.
Another sensitive issue discussed was prisoner exchanges and the exchange of dead bodies between Moscow and Kiev. The deputy defense minister stressed that from the Russian side, it's always all done within the legal framework and in line with Geneva Conventions and the UN principles. The prisoners are always treated well, provided with food and water, and also allowed to call their families. At the same time, he complained that Ukraine often violates the rules of war, including regarding prisoners of war. And there are many cases of the captured Russian military beaten up and even tortured. And today at the briefing, he called on foreign military colleagues to use their influence on Kiev to stop it. There have already been 27 exchange operations between Moscow and Kiev, including a crucial and the largest in June, when 144 Ukrainian military, including from the notorious Azov battalion, were released. And the sides are now planning and preparing more exchange operations.